My boyfriend's mother wants me. The rain hammered against the windshield as I sat frozen in the driveway, staring at the warm glow emanating from the windows of the house I'd come to know as my second home. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, and my heart pounded so violently I thought it might shatter my ribcage. Inside that house was Daniel, my boyfriend of 3 years, the man I was supposed to marry in 6 months. And inside that house was also Catherine, his mother, the woman who had just confessed her love for me 2 hours ago in the most unexpected, earth-shattering moment of my entire life. I had always admired Catherine from the moment Daniel first introduced us. She was elegant, intelligent, and possessed a warmth that made everyone around her feel seen and valued. At 48, she carried herself with a grace that came from years of navigating life's complexities as a single mother. After her husband passed away when Daniel was just 12, she had built a successful career as an architect, raised a wonderful son, and somehow still managed to make everyone who entered her orbit feel like they mattered. I found myself drawn to her kindness, her wisdom, the way she listened with her entire being when you spoke. Over the years, our relationship had evolved from polite courtesy to genuine friendship. We'd spend hours talking about art, philosophy, and dreams while Daniel was at work. She became my confidant, my mentor, someone I trusted with my deepest thoughts. But today, everything had shattered into a million unrecognizable pieces. Catherine had invited me to lunch at a small cafe downtown, something we did occasionally. The conversation had flowed easily as always, moving from her latest architectural project to my struggles at the marketing firm where I worked. Then as we walked along the riverside afterward, she had stopped suddenly, turned to face me with tears streaming down her face, and spoken words that would forever divide my life into before and after. She told me that she had been fighting feelings for me for over a year, that every time she saw me with Daniel, her heart broke a little more, that she knew it was wrong and impossible, but she couldn't keep pretending anymore. She loved me, not as a future daughter-in-law, not as a friend, but as a woman loves another woman, with every fiber of her being. The confession had left me speechless, standing there by the water as the world seemed to tilt on its axis. I had stammered something incoherent, gotten into my car and driven aimlessly for 2 hours, trying to process the emotional tsunami that had just crashed over my life. And now here I was, sitting outside the house where Daniel was probably wondering why I was late for the dinner he'd prepared, while his mother was inside somewhere, probably drowning in regret and fear about what she'd revealed. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to push these feelings away, to pretend the conversation never happened, to marry Daniel and build the safe, predictable life we'd planned together. But there was another part of me, a part I'd kept buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it didn't exist, that was trembling with recognition and terrifying possibility. The truth I'd never spoken aloud to anyone, not even to myself in the quiet darkness of sleepless nights, was that I had felt something for Catherine too. It had started so innocuously, so gradually that I hadn't even recognized it as it was happening. The way my heart would lift when I knew I'd see her. The way her laugh could brighten my entire day. The way I found myself watching her hands as she sketched designs. The elegant movement of her fingers. The concentration on her face. The way conversations with her felt more real, more alive than conversations with anyone else, including Daniel. I had told myself it was admiration, a deep friendship, the connection between two kindred spirits. But Catherine's confession had ripped away all my careful self-deception, and I was left staring at a truth that terrified me to my core. I loved Daniel. I genuinely did. He was kind, stable, supportive, everything anyone could want in a partner. Our relationship was comfortable, easy, built on mutual respect and shared goals. His proposal had felt like the natural next step, and I'd said yes without hesitation because it made sense. Everyone was happy for us. My parents adored him. My friends called us the perfect couple. On paper, our life together looked ideal. But if I was being truly honest with myself, something had always been missing. There was no electricity, no burning passion, no feeling of coming home to myself. I had convinced myself that this was what adult love looked like, that the butterflies and intensity I'd once imagined were just fairy tales fed to us by movies and romance novels. Real love, I'd told myself, was partnership and compatibility. But now, sitting in this car with rain blurring the world around me, I realized I'd been lying to myself. The reason I'd never felt that spark with Daniel wasn't, because mature love was supposed to be calm and predictable. It was because I'd been trying to force myself into a shape that didn't fit, trying to want something I thought I should want rather than acknowledging what I actually felt. And what I actually felt, what had been growing in the secret chambers of my heart, despite all my efforts to ignore it, was a deep and undeniable connection to his mother. The realization felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one step forward meant everything in my life would change irreversibly. The complexity of the situation was overwhelming. This wasn't just about my feelings or Catherine's feelings. This was about Daniel, a good man who loved me and trusted both of us completely. This was about families and expectations, and societal norms that had no space for a story like ours. This was about the fact that if I acknowledged these feelings, if I acted on them, I would hurt Daniel in ways that might never heal. I would destroy the family dynamics that Catherine had worked so hard to build. I would face judgment and condemnation from almost everyone in our lives. The safe, comfortable future I'd planned would evaporate, replaced by uncertainty and scandal and pain. But as I sat there watching the rain create rivers down the windshield, I also realized that denying these feelings would be a different kind of destruction. If I married Daniel while in love with his mother, I would be living a lie every single day. I would be giving him a version of myself that could never fully belong to him, and he deserved better than that. Catherine would have to watch us build a life together, attend our wedding, hold our future children, all while her heart slowly broke into dust, and I would spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been, looking at her across dinner tables and holiday gatherings, feeling that ache of unspoken truth between us. That kind of slow suffocation might be quieter than the explosion of honesty, but it would be no less devastating. I thought about all the, small moments over the past year that suddenly made sense in this new context. The way Catherine's hand would linger just a moment too long when she touched my shoulder. The way her eyes would track me across a room during family gatherings. The slight tension I sometimes felt between us that I'd attributed to my imagination but now recognized as the electricity of unacknowledged attraction. The time 6 months ago when I'd stayed the night after too much wine at dinner, and I'd woken in the middle of the night to find her, standing in the doorway of the guest room, just watching me sleep with an expression of such tender longing that it had made my breath catch. She'd whispered an apology about checking if I needed extra blankets, but I'd felt something shift in the air between us, some unspoken acknowledgement we'd both immediately retreated from. And there were my own moments too, the ones I'd refused to examine, the way I'd started dressing more carefully when I knew I'd see her, the jealousy that had flared unexpectedly when Daniel mentioned his mother was going on a date with a colleague last year, a feeling I'd quickly suppressed and rationalized away. The dreams I'd had, vivid and passionate, that I'd woken from with guilt and confusion, forcing myself to forget them by morning. The way my body responded when she was near, a heightened awareness I'd never felt with Daniel or any of my previous boyfriends. All the signs had been there, written in a language I'd refused to learn to read. If this story is touching something in your heart, if you've ever faced an impossible choice between what you're supposed to want and what you actually feel, please let me know by liking this video and sharing your thoughts. Your engagement helps stories like this reach others who might need to hear them, who might feel less alone in their own complicated truths. The decision before me wasn't really a decision at all, I realized. It was an acknowledgement. The choice had already been made by my heart long ago, even as my mind fought desperately to deny it. I could either honor that truth, as terrifying and complicated as it was, or I could spend the rest of my life as a ghost of myself, going through the motions of a life that looked right from the outside while feeling hollow within. Neither path would be easy. One promised immediate devastation and uncertain future. The other promised slow erosion of my soul and the souls of the people I loved. I finally turned off the car and stepped out into the rain, letting the cold water soak through my clothes as I walked toward the house. The weight of what I was about to do pressed down on my shoulders, but there was also a strange sense of clarity, of finally stepping into alignment with myself after years of subtle disconnection. I thought about Daniel, about how much this would hurt him, and my heart broke for the pain I was about to cause. But I also knew that the kindest thing I could do for him in the long run was, to be honest, to give him the chance to find someone who could love him with their whole heart, undivided and true. Catherine answered the door, her face pale and drawn, eyes red from crying. We stood there in the doorway, rain dripping from my hair, and in that moment, everything that needed to be said passed between us in silence. Daniel called from the kitchen, asking if I was staying for dinner, his voice full of innocent warmth and trust. Catherine's hand found mine just for a second, a brief touch that felt like both a question and an answer. Before I tell you how this story ends, I want to ask you something from the heart. If you believe in living authentically even when it's hard, even when society doesn't understand, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between what was expected and what was true? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. What happened next would change all our lives forever. There would be tears, anger, betrayal, and grief. There would be difficult conversations and fractured relationships. There would be judgment from people who couldn't understand how love could be both wrong and right simultaneously. But there would also be truth. And in that truth, however painful its birth, there would eventually be the possibility of authentic happiness for everyone involved, though the path to get there would be long and arduous. As I stood there with Catherine, about to walk inside and shatter the comfortable illusions we'd all been living under, I realized that sometimes love doesn't arrive in the package we ordered. Sometimes it shows up in the most inconvenient, impossible circumstances, asking us to be braver than we ever thought we could be. Sometimes choosing love means choosing chaos and uncertainty over comfort and approval. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is tell the truth, even when that truth feels like it might destroy everything. The rain continued to fall as I stepped inside, ready to face whatever came next, carrying in my heart the knowledge that authenticity, however costly, was the only foundation upon which real love could ever be built.